Why do people come out?
Coming out culture.
Come out.
Coming out culture.
Coming out.
In this documentary, Micah and I wanted to investigate coming out culture, the positives, the negatives, and how it will look in the future.
So queer theory is really notoriously difficult to define, and in a lot of articles and books about queer theory, they will openly say, we don't know, or we can't define it.
Queer theory is one of those nebulous terms that gets thrown around a lot, and there is that question of what does it actually entail.
The point of not being able to define it is because it allows the term to be more fluid, to be used in different situations.
For me, queer theory is all about looking at how non-normative identities, so things that aren't heterosexual or aren't cisgendered, are represented and how they exist in the world around us.
I personally define queer theory as any kind of critical framework that seeks to challenge norms. However, if that was my only definition of queer theory, then I would be missing out on challenging things that aren't normative, but things that are still maybe problematic or things that we need to look at.
Queer is not about who you're having sex with. That can be a dimension of it. But queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live.
I'm Jamie and I'm 19 years old.
My name's Molly and I'm 19.
So Jamie, when did you first come out to someone?
I would say when I moved schools, the topic comes up a lot with teenagers these days, I guess, so I just slipped it in there.
I first came out to my friends when I was 14. It was over a group chat, so it wasn't that nerve-wracking.
I think social media is very casual about it these days and makes a lot of memes and whatnot.
It was positive because, I don't know, the community that I found was really chill about the whole thing, and there were memes about it, people just kind of talking about it in a very general way.
I think for a lot of people it's a question of whether people around them will be accepting and how they'll react to that.
So what do you think about media entertainment in the direction it's heading in representing queer people and their experiences?
It's getting better.
Happy some of the directors and writers, they're writing content on this thing.
It's always the right argument of, oh, your character is autistic, queer, one person can't be all that.
Yes,
Bro, I know so many autistic queer people.
We have really limited mainstream representations of coming out. They all depict coming out as, again, a really singular experience, something to be kind of quite ashamed of, but increasingly, we're seeing representations where coming out isn't such a big thing.
A lot of these that I'm making as examples are children's cartoons.
Yes. No one's born homophobic, no one's born sexist, no one's born racist. You get taught it, so putting it in cartoons for young people
Sets up the values for life.
Great idea.
Do you think coming out will still be as significant as it is today in the future with people moving beyond labels?
Yes.
Yeah.
Society doesn't change that quick.
I mean, we're hoping it gets better.
I think there'll always be words to describe someone's sexuality, but it will be less of a thing and more just the norm.
Coming out is an individual story and it's an individual experience. But I hope that it's easier in the future for everyone.
It's kind of establishing that coming out is not a thing to be ashamed of. And I think that's really important.
I'm a homosexual.
Susan, I'm gay.
You're gay.
I think I'm bisexual.
Freddie, you're gay.
Tammy Thompson's a girl.
Steve.
I'm gay.
Honey.
Skip that and I am gay.
Well, as you know, obviously there's a progress of acceptance of queer people in our society. I think understanding coming out and understanding sexuality as an identity, we have to start in the 18th, 19th century. So coming out around that time would have been to confess something, confess something in the same way we would confess a crime or confess a mental illness, like saying I have depression or I have anxiety, and those carry a fair amount of stigma. Over time, it's become the idea of being queer, being homosexual as an identity has changed. It's in 1969, the first Pride Parade / riot, the Stonewall riot, sort of celebrated or began to celebrate the civil rights movement for the LGBTIQ community. And so it started to shift the identity of the homosexual as criminal or the homosexual as like medical patient to something, something else, something that we could be proud of.
Coming out isn't really a singular thing. I feel for lots of people, they come out several times in their lives. It harkens to the idea that if you are different, you have to explain yourself, whereas if you're not, you don't really have to do that.
There's so much more to being a queer person than just coming out. Firstly, one doesn't really come out just once. You have to come out multiple times in multiple situations. You come out to your friends, your family. You come out to your workmates. You come out to your doctor who's asking you about who your sexual partners are, and you have to do this almost every time. So it's like a really iterative practice, and it can be really exhausting. What I think a lot of queer people would like is to not need to come out.
But I think potentially it could be a little dangerous in that it becomes such a casual thing that you kind of forget where you are in real life with the people surrounding you, like physically.
Like on one hand, it is normalizing it and making it more casual so that people would feel more free to come out, but it also can dramatize like the whole thing.
Yes.
Like which does put on more pressure about how to go about coming out and what kind of responses you'll get.
I think in like a future would suggest that there's multiple ways of being queer that are okay and acceptable. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually got more and more specific with labels rather than dismissing them totally.
For quite a lot of people, especially if they feel like they're the only ones in an identity, finding out there's a name for that identity can be a massive relief. It's like, I'm not broken. But, it is finding out there's a word, there are other people, there are communities around this particular identity is really important for anyone who is in these spaces.
Located in the heart of Perth City is the Court. The building was built in 1888 and in the early 1990s became an openly gay and lesbian venue.
So are you excited to Yes. Yeah. So we've been going through a tough time and I'm like, come on girl, ready to go, let's have some fun. To get drunk. Just to go out, yeah.
The Court has become a popular venue for the LGBTQ+ community, often showcasing drag queens and drag shows.
I've been trained for 7 years and I've been doing it for the world. And hopefully another 7 years more. And like guys do, we're moving forward into a new future that's more inclusive and more fun here at the Court. Yeah.
It's awesome. I feel like it's like the place to be. I think that's just, yeah.
And I feel pretty safe here. I think that's like a huge thing, feeling safe going out.
I think the biggest thing, and it gets said so many times, but you're loved. You are loved and you deserve to be here in all your wonderful forms.
Coming out is not necessary to knowing who you are.
It is not a state of mind, it is a state of love. You can love anyone, either a girl, either a boy. You can't change yourself.
Yeah, there's always going to be a safe space for you no matter who you are. There's so many different safe spaces coming out for so many different genders, sexualities, all that sort of stuff. Someone's going to accept you.
If your family doesn't, make your own family.
Yeah.
Naturally love yourself, be yourself, and be kind to others. Always find that love and light, and follow me on Instagram at Perry Prism. You will. That's nice. Thanks for